So get started on this second presentation. Hopefully it's a little more fun and exciting and probably more sexier than basic account level or report levels. But there's a buzzword going around right now called data analytics or business intelligence. And I want to kind of share some of the things that we're doing with one of my clients out in Nebraska. And we're able to get to data. We're able to see data in ways and do things that we've never been able to get to before. So as we go through this, I'll be introducing some of the people I work with, and they can explain some of the details behind why we're doing what we're doing. So moving. Okay, Norm. So the software that I've been trying to learn is called Power BI. It's a data analytics tool, and there's several of these data analytics business intelligence tools on the market right now. Power BI is one, Tableau is another, Quicksilver I think is a third. There's a growing number of tools out there. But a few years ago, I went down the trail, Microsoft trail, right or wrong. But so what I'll be presenting is some of the potential of how we can connect to the FBS database and start pulling in some visualizations. But I think the key behind data analytics, what I want to stress is it creates a way of automating processes that we normally would have to do manually. And so basically every day or maybe several times a day, it can go out and repeat a series of processes and automatically, there's scripts and there's some programming behind it, but the process is automated. We just have to so our challenge right now is making sure that the current data is current in the database. But I went about 2 or 3 years ago. I recognized the change was needed. I was struggling with Excel. I was getting calls on broken spreadsheet links not working or formulas not right. I was always typing numbers from. In case example I'll use is harvest data. I would type numbers in, or have numbers in a spreadsheet for harvest, and then I record those same numbers back into FBS as a data entry. And then I'd have another spreadsheet that I take numbers out of FBS and code right back into a spreadsheet. So there's handling of numbers multiple times. And I was tired of doing that. I was trying to simplify. I was trying to be more efficient. So that's when and then I was talking to a friend in Lincoln, and he lives in the corporate world. And he was talking about every morning he has dashboards that he can go in and look at and see what the prior day's performance was. And he says it's just automatic. That's something he has every day. Every morning he goes in. And I thought to myself, that's something I need to learn. So, and I've been seeing some literature and documentation on this Power BI and business intelligence. So I really started focusing on how we can make that work. But basically, like I tried to explain, it's a process that's mostly automated, where we connect to a data source. That data source can be Excel, it can be the MASA database, it can be Access, it can be another API from wherever. But you can connect to data through what we call Power Query. Let's see, I got ahead of myself. And then this ETL process will go through and transform and mush and merge and twist and turn this data into a format that is suitable for a business intelligence reporting. The refreshes occur frequently, and like I mentioned, every morning we can come into fresh reports that probably would have taken me days in the past to put together, but every morning we now have those available. So I'm close to my dream of, when I got into this, my dream was to never touch a number more than once. So I'm getting close to that once we get this system hopefully in place. So, and I presented this the last couple of years at this conference. So I'm not going to go into a lot of the detail of what we have, but I share a little bit about what's changed this past year. And the first and the biggest is I now have access to the MASA Cloud SQL database. And by doing that, I now am able to pull in two sets of entities into one data model. So that's been a big plus for me. I've been able to basically double the reporting just by having a single source of data from the MASA database. The other thing that I've always been challenged with, and one of my users was always struggled with what I was doing, is I would show a number, say an income statement type number, and then they go look for that same number in FBS. Well, it wasn't, they couldn't find it. And the reason is my data mapping was inconsistent. You know, when I said it was a repair in Power BI, may or may not match what they said was a repair over in FBS. So I've found a way of incorporating the FBS report templates, balance sheet and income statement templates, found a way of incorporating those into the Power BI system. And that way, when we look at a report in Power BI, that will match the same report over in FBS. And I think that's going to open up a lot of opportunities as we move forward. The other thing that's taken place back in December, you know, Microsoft is throwing a lot of resources into this. And back in December, they came out with 2 or 3 fairly extensive updates. And as I read about them, I realized that I needed to take advantage of those updates, which probably meant I kind of needed to start over on my data model and my calculations. So I've been slowly kind of remodeling and retooling to better utilize some of the technology enhancements that came out last winter. So as I go through these reports, you know, this is real and live data, and I thank the clients that I have for allowing me to show some of this. So as we go through the examples, we'll have some blurring going on, and I'm just doing that as protection of his data. So here's an example of, you know, we talked about the S1 and S2 concept, where we have individual pieces of equipment. In this case, tractors, semi-tractors, or trailers, where we group like-kind tractors together, or we group like-kind trailers, and we just have costs. We have costs for the 4 or 5 years, and you know, total dollars, and then cost per unit. Now I'm going to play a video, and you can see as we play those toggles, as we switch these toggles around, how the values change. So I'm selecting different trailers, and there's the individual trailer by year. I want to go up and select tractor for slide bottoms. So again, this ability of quickly seeing our costs by the different resources, groups or individual resources. Yeah, that was one of the first major advances when I got into this. This is one of the first things that we were to generate. So another report that has come together recently, and to me, this is a big deal. Yeah, we're getting some feedback. Can you mute yourself, please? Okay, thank you. Claire, I'm not sure you're muted. Okay, but this is one of those reports that I've always dreamed of having. Basically, it's our profitability across a production year for different crops, and you can drill down by field. And in this particular case, we have a lot of services or custom hire type activities. What's the profitability of those custom hire or service activities by year? And then we can even drill down and see which customer or which project may or may not have been billed for, or would like, what the pricing was for each of those customers. We get down to the level of detail that we've never been able to get to before. Here's another example of an executive summary by crop. Again, we got different crops by crop year, and we can see just a history of yield and acres, cost of sales, profit, operating profit. Those are all dollars, and then we can toggle back and forth between dollars and acres and units. Again, just quick examples. Here's a cost for a particular crop, and then over on the right-hand side is the profitability by each field. And then we can click on one of those fields, and then that dollar per change column would show us exactly where that field differed from the average. Again, just trying to highlight some of the potential that we have with this type of technology. Okay, here's a repayment capacity report. Yesterday, Todd talked about some of the ratios the Farm Financial Standards Council is working on. Well, one of those was the repayment capacity and debt coverage. Here's my initial attempt at coming up with what that might look like. It's a fairly complicated set of numbers, but I think from this template, I think we can get to some of the ratios that the Farm Financial Standards Council is going to be suggesting. Again, just some quick examples of what we can get to. Okay, another challenge that I know we've had with as I present traditional FBS reporting is where we have an activity cost. Say we have a crop and then an activity cost, which is represented on the left-hand side. And how often do we get questions on what's inside those activity costs? What are those made of? Well, to find that answer, we have to go back into another report, standard cost vendor model report, and look at that detail. Well, with this technology, we've been able to create an alternative view where we can toggle between activities or more of the traditional ledgers. So we can toggle between, like planting, and then over on the right-hand side, we can see how those dollars are represented in terms of the original ledger, either labor, depreciation, if the equipment's rented. And I think this is going to help answer a lot of questions as I work with clients. And I know last week a group of us met with we met with a set of some people, and that was their first question. We showed activity dollars, but what's inside those dollars? So to me, I think this is going to help us. Okay, and then I mentioned the data map. We're able to take use the FBS report templates and map those to the Power BI system. So basically what I'm going to show here is where we can map current assets, which is coming from the balance sheet template, and then map that into, well, that's the FBS report that comes across. And over in Power BI, that would be the ratios or the values that's generated from Power BI. So that way we have consistency in our data from FBS to the Power BI system. And again, this is something that enhancements from last year. Okay, another feature that has really been a blessing to find is the integration with Excel. And as business users, what's our favorite tool, go-to tool that we always fall back on? Well, for me, it's Excel, and for everybody I work with, it's Excel. So being a Microsoft product, the integration is pretty tight. And as I look at their product map, that cohesiveness is going to become even more so. So I'm excited about maybe not only the dashboarding side, but the ability to pull right back into Excel. Because how many of us have Excel spreadsheets that we populate by hand? Well, I'm going to show you ways that we can pull data from the Power BI data model right back into Excel. And I know from a personal perspective, when I found this little gem, I know it brought new energy in life and how I was thinking and how I was doing things, because I knew there was finally an answer of not having to touch the number more than once. So here's an example. Again, this client, trucking company, and we was wanting to forecast. We knew, say, we're at the middle of the year, and we wanted to forecast out what the year-end profitability might be for each service. So here we were trying to match the year-to-date actuals, which come from the accounting system, and then we have some projections, forecasts that come from Excel. How do we marry those two together? So by using, again, some of the integration features, I'm going to show that we just go up and click refresh, and what it's doing now, it's going out into the Power BI service, and it's pulling in the values from the service. So it'll take a few seconds here, but it's going out into the service and bringing in pre-calculated values that we already have inside Power BI back into Excel. So, the calculation's complete. So we're as current as we can be. Now, if we used to do that by hand, that'd be a 2-3 day project, honestly, to calculate what the historical has been and then getting them into a forecast for with the next 6 months of projections. So right there, it's by few clicks, we've saved a couple days. In my mind, saved a couple days of time. So as we've been using this tool, and we've learned a lot of things, and I want to introduce Randy. Randy Gangwish is one of my clients, and Emmy Powers, I believe she's online, and want to talk through some of the changes and different changes that we've made and how we've reporting our resource costs. So I'll introduce Randy Gangwish.
Okay, Daryl, one of the biggest costs in production agriculture is equipment. And we just keep being challenged to understand what our equipment costs are. So you go work with your accountant, CPA, and you do depreciation schedules, and you're trying to understand, we're trying to forecast what life is on each piece of equipment and what the salvage is going to be. And then we roll those things into our activity costs. So planting, spraying, whatever. So, and activity costs roll into the crops. So at the end of the year, you're saying, do I really believe that? Because part of the problem is at the end of the year, you have gain or loss on sale of equipment. So sale of equipment, when you have fairly sizable gain or loss on sale of equipment, that means you didn't depreciate very well. So I'm still that's been one of our bigger challenges is, if we're back to trying to believability of what our cost of production is, and equipment costs are a big deal, and we're not doing a very good job of expensing or depreciating our equipment, then we're really doing a head scratcher. So what we've decided to do is move to a economic depreciation, or what we're going to call fair market value depreciation. And and this is no easy task either. Everybody understand there's different pieces of equipment that you can go out on Tractor House or wherever and look up John Deere equipment, and you'll find a plethora of information about a particular year and model on a tractor, but you may have a different OEM that's a hay baler or whatever it is, that's just not a lot of those around. So, but we are, our plan, we have already implemented, part of this anyway is end of the year fair market value. And then we're using fair market value depreciation then is the change from one year to the next. So you can see this isn't going to be an easy challenge. The other benefit of that, of course, is that you're saying what your fair market value is on your balance sheet. And so at any one point in time, if somebody's wanting to, if you're wanting to sell equipment, you're already you got a line in the sand what you think it's worth. You know, may not be what it always takes to buy and a seller. So you might not sell for that, but at least you think you're pretty close. So when you're turning in equipment valuations to your banker or your insurance agent, we think the balance sheet's going to get cleaned up a little better too. So that's kind of a big picture, Daryl, on the fair market value side of things. And we maybe get into a little more of the detail here a little bit.
Yeah. So here's again a report by different resources. We're able to show, part of the value of the equipment is based on the repairs that you put in for that year. So we can pull in what the repairs are. We can pull in what capital expenditures were for that particular year. We know what our cumulative cost is, and then we start coming in with fair market value changes. But we got a lot of it blurred out, but we can start seeing. We can see changes in cost per mile or cost per unit much easier in this format. And we can start having some, we can, at least that we now know what our ownership cost between repairs and what depreciation, fair market value depreciation is. And then we look at our cost per unit. And if there's variation, then we need to know if it's a utilization issue or if it's a cost issue. But this format is allowing us to see across years for all the different pieces of equipment of what those different costs are. And we're trying to stabilize, because we were seeing a lot of variability, and we're trying to stabilize that variability. Emmy, are you on board? Do you have anything to offer? Add?
Just that having this fair market value change per mile estimate, or as we do it down the road, more years of history with it helps with forecasting out for the year ahead as well. Treating the fair market value change as a variable cost, and then forecasting out on a per mile basis what we think that might be throughout the year, and then making those entries on a monthly basis, and then any year-end adjustments that need to be made can be done at year-end.
And Amy just brought up a really big point. We've been treating depreciation as a variable cost.
Fixed cost. We were treating it as a fixed cost.
We were fixed cost, but it's so every mile that you put on that piece of equipment is changing the fair market value. So, as you're thinking about contribution margin or some other ways of looking at things, it's more, we're looking at depreciation or a change in value of equipment as a variable cost.
Okay. Do we have any questions on some of our concepts of converting to market value depreciation? And again, having this type of tool allows us to see the data much quicker and faster than the traditional spreadsheet way. Any questions online? Okay, moving forward, I'll bring Emmy Powers on board. She's been working with me on automated data collection, and part of this Microsoft Power Tools, they call it, there's a feature called Power Apps. And with that, Emmy, I'll let you kind of explain what Power Apps and how you're using it.
Okay. Yep, Power Apps is, like Daryl said, a power tool, part of that family. It's a Microsoft service, they say, for innovators everywhere to create, connect, and share business apps with your team on any device in minutes. And I think that's one of the greatest things, is that it's real time. You can enter data, and within seconds it'll show up across to anybody who happens to have that app. So you're looking at real time data. It allows you to create a mobile app that runs on Android, iOS, Windows devices, as well as just on your web browser. So you can look at it and make entries on your desktop as well. So it's easy use across all mobile platforms. They use built-in connections to connect your app to external data sources, such as OneDrive, SharePoint, Power BI. There's lots more. And in addition, just storing your data inside the app directly as well, if you want to look at things just on the app. So sharing it is very easy. Once you create the app, you just publish it to the service, and then just enter the email addresses of your coworkers that you want to share it with. And once they get access, then they can view everything in real time. So it makes data entry much quicker. You can, myself in the office can see the data much quicker when it's entered in the app versus, outside people recording things on paper and pencil sheets and then bringing them into the office. There's delays with that. So this allows the information to come through much quicker. And then this is an app that I created for harvest loads. And so I just have a video here of how it works, I guess, if you want to.
So this image you see is obviously on her computer screen, but this same app can be on anybody's smartphone device. So I'll play the video, and we've got sound to it, so I hope we can pull that sound in.
This is what the Harvest app looks like when you first pull it up. As you can see, there's a brief summary of each load that has been entered so far. To enter a new load, I just click this at the top, and you can choose from field or storage. In this case, it's coming from the field. Your date and time will default to whatever is current. Product, yellow beans, enter your operator field. Now it's only going to pull up yellow bean fields, so that's the product I have selected. You can select your equipment, where it's going. There's not a contract since it's going to storage. I'll go ahead and enter my ticket number, as well as my gross weight and my tare weight. Based on these two entries, your net weight will populate. Once I put in my moisture, if there's any shrink to the bushels, I have it set up to go ahead and calculate that. There's also a place to enter your FM and any additional comments you might have. Once that's all completed, you can go ahead and submit the form, and now this new entry will be added to the list of all loads.
Okay, do you have a video here? No, I don't think you do.
Yep. So, this just shows the image on the left is what they call your gallery view. And this is just an accumulation of all the data that's been entered. And it's really pretty simple. Like when I'm making this, they have templates. And so once the data is in, it'll throw it into a template. You can make any adjustments that you want, but you don't have to completely start from scratch, which is really nice. This particular, on my gallery, I wanted to be able to have some search options. So if a driver only wants to look at the entries on their truck they can simply put their truck number in and only those entries will come up. Or if you want to see how many bushels have been delivered on a certain contract, you can just enter the contract number in the search. And as you can see at the very bottom, I just have a search in bushels there. So if you know you're getting close to delivering, you can just look it up right there from the field and see how many bushels you've delivered. Also, if you are curious how many have been delivered off of the field, I also have that as a search at the top. So you can export this data to spreadsheets to look at it, which we will shortly, but it also has the availability to have data collection just from right within the app as well. The image on the right side is your edit view, or that's where you submit your forms. And there's all sorts of a variety of controls. For example, the toggle switch, which I have at the top, where I have entered, so they can enter from the field or storage. There's drop-down boxes, which I have for most, and all the data coming in, it does have to be in a table form, but you simply just create tables with the data that you want to populate in each field, and then it will just allow those entries. You can create if statements. For example, I have, your different crop products, yellow beans, corn, and then depending upon the crop that is selected, then you can have only those fields come up in that next drop-down box. You can have text and number entry boxes like I do with the ticket number and your quantities. There's also the options for check boxes. If you want to check a form, you can put images on here. You can even, if you're doing something where you want to collect a signature, you can have a stylus and insert. So there's a signature line, pen input. There's many different options. The formulas are similar to Excel, but they're a little bit more complex, I would say. That was a little bit of a learning curve, is how you create your formulas and get your input, your drop down boxes or whatever you're working on, how to format it to what you need. But thankfully, there's lots of online resources, YouTube videos and things that are very helpful in getting you set up and going. So. Then we created some spreadsheets or some pivot tables that all the data just automatically will come in from the app. And so
you want to play that?
Yep, great reporting tool. Yep, go ahead, Daryl.
This is a reporting tool that we have created in Excel. It's a pivot table that connects to the data in the app. And I simply do a data refresh, and it will check for any new entries that have been entered into the app and pull them in here. So you can see, I just did a refresh. And this is showing all of the well-being entries. And right here is the breakdown entry that I just made.
Yep. So if you have someone, on the desktop or that's reviewing all the data, or you want printables for reporting or whatnot, everything from the app, all the data entries come directly in. You just simply have to refresh the data, and then, as Daryl talked earlier about the Power Query, it goes out and all that new data comes in. So it's a pretty slick process.
Randy, do you have any comments on why we did this? Why you took us down this trail?
Well, I don't know how many of the folks out there are using Conservis or Granular or some way of trying to collect this kind of information, but suddenly this kind of stuff is pretty reasonably priced and really accessible. I mean, Emmy's done a great job of just setting these up on phones, and it's pulling in right into our set of our books, and then we can use them as cost drivers, you know, as bushels. This information get pulled into FBS then for harvest weights. So you just Daryl talked about waking up and finding new things and doing new ways of doing things. But just imagine all the if you're out there in a livestock barn or wherever you're at, and you need to collect something. You know, for years we were keeping paper logs in the tractor, so every time we went a particular activity, if we were planting and we went from one field to the next field, whatever, but 100 hours on, at least we knew that we use the hours on each field as a cost driver to drive that activity cost out to that crop and field. And now, you know, you can collect this on an app on your phone, and the paper can get lost or whatever happens to it, but it's there. I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, and another advantage of what we're doing, well, I hope it's an advantage, is, you know, I made the comment, I don't want to touch a number more than once. Well, this particular case, we've got our harvest data, and we use these bushels in two different places. One within FBS harvest records, and then the other one as a billing unit over in the trucking entity. So I can take one source of data and I can push it two ways, back into the trucking data set, and then also into FBS. And I'll get into that right now. So again, part of the refresh process, it creates a table, a special formatted table that matches the FBS import modules. So you can see that I can bring this into this format and create a CSV file for right now. And then those columns will match up with the FBS import. So bringing that data in should be almost touchless. You know, we do have some, I want to be upfront, we do have some hitches on some of this import process. Hopefully we can get those worked out over time. But I've been through it enough where I know it works. We just got to get the finished goods project to pull in mainly. Okay, so any questions on Power Apps or what we're trying to, just another sidebar to some of the power tools that Microsoft has been working on. Any questions online? I don't see any. Okay, you know, as I got into this, two and a half years ago, didn't know what I was doing, and I thought I could, if I just devoted a lot of time to it, I could figure it out. But I've made mistakes along the line, and you know, I'm just showing you this to hopefully mistakes that others can avoid. First of all, when I started this project, I didn't know anything about Power BI. I knew the accounting side, I knew what I wanted, but I didn't know anything about the data modeling or pulling data in from different sources, and then the process of just getting it formulated in the right manner. So I started off with way too of a complex project to start with. I should have kept something simple while I was trying to learn the technology. The other thing that I really struggled with up front was I was trying to do all this through Excel. I dumped FBS reports into Excel and pull them in that way, or then I eventually moved to the Access files and used the Power BI gateway. There was just a lot of extra challenges that I had to fight through. But once the MASA, the SQL database got up in the cloud where I've been able to connect to it, 80% of the problems that I was fighting for those 2 years have been minimized and they go away. So I just want to encourage that whatever data source we use, that it's a stable data source. In terms of Excel, one of the things I've learned about Excel is you can run, connect to a gateway and have that Excel file on your local server, your local computer. But I've learned that if you store that file on OneDrive, things just work so much better. So I've been in the process of converting server-based files to OneDrive. And that's helping some of the efficiencies and refreshes. I lacked support and people to talk to. I reached out and talked to a few consultants, but they were all above me and they wanted to do things their way. They didn't understand the cost allocation concept I was trying to build in. So I really struggled with finding somebody to help me up front that understood where I was going. I'm sure they're there, and now that I have some experience, I can talk the same language as they do. But there up front, I was really struggling in just really floundering at how to get started in this. There's, like Emmy said, there's with YouTube and what's on internet now, there's 1 million hours of video. There's a series by Excel is Fun. Those are fairly elementary type videos. He's got a series on Power BI and DAX. That's probably the best place to start for some of you. Then Guy in the Cube is another source of videos. Those are like 5 or 6 minute little blogs. It kind of gives you, they don't give you a lot of detail, but they kind of give you an overview of how to solve problems. And then that last point, and I alluded to this before, was I felt like I lost a lot of credibility when I wasn't able to match my Power BI reports up with FBS. So again, being able to pull in the template from FBS into the Power BI, I think is going to be a big plus for me. Okay, somebody's. Okay, well, thank you. Like I said, this is exciting technology. So why? Come on. Trying to move that forward, guys. So, okay. The other thing I want to stress is the importance of culture, data culture within the organization. And this is probably a weakness of mine, is I just forge ahead with my way of thinking and how I want to do things and what I'm used to doing. But I need to align what I'm doing with this technology, align what I'm doing with what the culture is and what the desires is of the business. And that's where we need to align our goals with our reporting. So when managers look at reports, we start seeing something that they can relate to and something that triggers an action for them. And that's where I really need some focus, where I really need some help, is instead of generating all these historical type reports, but how do we get to action-based targets? And that's where we come into KPIs and forecasting and some of the things we talked about yesterday with margin. What was that term he used? Disruption margin, capturing margin is what he was using. But that's where I really need to focus on. Having somebody with, again, watching these videos, having somebody within the organization that provides the executive leadership or the support behind it. We also need to recognize that the first dashboard we do is probably not going to be the last dashboard. It's an evolving process. I think working with Randy has demonstrated that. What I did 2 or 3 years ago, we've evolved so far from that, just from what we've learned and what we think we need to do from Randy's perspective, where we need to be. So I have some links, obviously those out in the online, hopefully you can see that. But those are just some, Matthew Roach, he's got a good series on data culture. So I would encourage, as we move into these data analytics, and Norm, I think this would be an excellent topic to have at a FBS conference at some time. Is just understanding the data culture, establishing goals, and aligning everybody, and making sure our reporting ties to those organizational needs. Okay, again, just some next steps. Obviously, like I said, my last presentation, there's always things that needs to be, I always have ideas of next steps. But I think the Mossy group and myself, we need to find somebody that has experience with Power BI and how we can start, or whatever technology we end up using, how we can start incorporating this type of visualizations inside the FBS/MOSA software. And that's one of the goals of MOSA, is being able to. And then what Emmy demonstrated with Power Apps. And as I watch some of these videos, there's just a whole new world out there that I wasn't even exposed to 2 years ago for sure. I think the MOSA group, FBS group, needs to, I would hope we could find somebody that could help us coach us through this, the potential that these products bring to the table. Norm, you're going to say something?
I was going to ask you what the path is for FBS users. What alternatives, can they do that on their own, or they need to be in the MOSA?
Well, I wouldn't encourage anybody to do what I've done, because it's been a challenge, and Randy knows it's been a couple years to get to where I'm at, and I'm not where I want to be for sure. But from a MOSA perspective, we've got the data close to being ready in the cloud. I think the next step is for MOSA, and I think I've got that somewhere right here, is to, first of all, I think MOSA as a group needs to come together and find somebody that can help us in this next process.
That's the means for FBS.
That would be the means. Yeah.
Part of the MOSA.
Well, that would be if we use the MOSA database, yeah. But last year I had, during this presentation, I showed how we could take group closeout reports and come up with some hog closeouts, hog dashboards, and that was just taking traditional FBS reports, dumping them to Excel, and having a closeout report. That's something that probably anybody could do with a little bit of experience and time to start generating some dashboard type views. But anyway, as I've gone through this, I really think this technology is going to get us down to a daily reporting perspective. And, the traditional FBS whipping process is more monthly, with the lower cost of market between is monthly. I would suspect that eventually at some point in time, we need to think about daily adjustments. Norm's got a smirk on his face. That's a big change, yeah. And then, I make some comments about the S Center allocations. Those are based on percentages. In Randy's case, where we want to see our cost per unit for various pieces of equipment, traditionally that's at the S Center level. We need to get to where we have cost drivers at the S Center level instead of percentages. Then, what Brian alluded to yesterday in the MOSA discussion was data mapping and standardization. Like I showed an example of current assets and current liabilities. In my mind, if we could use the FBS templates as that mapping tool across the different Power BI implementations, I think that will, to me, that's going to go a long ways for us. Okay, with that, that's all I had for this presentation. Went through it pretty fast. And, last year, I think this was a 3-hour presentation, and this is online.